In a politically charged environment, the National Security Council (NSC) finds itself under scrutiny as prominent figures in the Republican Party, including former President Donald Trump and Senator Marco Rubio, voice concerns about what they termed the deep state within the council. This discontent has escalated, leading to significant administrative changes, including the placement of over 100 NSC staffers on administrative leave. The implications of these actions are reverberating through Washington, raising questions about the future of national security policy and the direction of the Republican Party. The term deep state, often used to describe a supposed shadowy network of entrenched bureaucrats operating independently of elected officials, has gained traction among Trump's supporters. Both Trump and Rubio have increasingly framed their critiques around this narrative, suggesting that the NSC has been infiltrated by individuals who do not align with the administration's agenda. We need to ensure that the voices advising our leaders reflect the will of the American people, not the interests of a hidden elite, Rubio stated during a recent press conference, emphasizing the need for transparency and loyalty within government ranks. The recent administrative leave of NSC staffers is a direct consequence of this rhetoric. According to reports, the decision was made to re-evaluate the personnel involved in national security decisions as Trump and his allies push for a more compliant staff. This has sparked fears among many analysts that the NSC, a critical body for U.S. foreign policy and security strategy, could become increasingly politicized. The NSC should be a place for experienced and nonpartisan experts who can provide sound advice to the president regardless of party affiliation, said a former NSC official, expressing concern over the shifting dynamics. Complicating matters is the ongoing situation in Venezuela, where Rubio and Richard Grenell, the former U.S. ambassador to Germany, have clashed over the best approach to U.S. foreign policy in the region. This discord highlights the fractious nature of Republican foreign policy under Trump, where differing strategies can emerge even among those within the same party. As tensions rise, the implications for U.S. involvement in Venezuela and its relations with neighboring countries remain uncertain. The fallout from these developments suggests a potential reconfiguration of the NSC as Trump and his allies seek to reshape it in line with their political ideology. The long-term impacts of these changes could extend beyond personnel adjustments, affecting how the U.S. engages with global threats and allies alike. Analysts warn that a less stable NSC could lead to erratic foreign policy decisions as the influence of partisan loyalty overtakes expertise and experience. As the situation continues to evolve, the implications for national security and the Republican Party's future remain to be seen. With the 2024 presidential election approaching, the outcome of these internal conflicts may not only redefine the NSC but could also influence the broader political landscape in the United States. The coming months will be crucial as we observe how these tensions resolve and what it means for America's role on the world stage. In a significant shift towards increased secrecy, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has imposed sweeping restrictions on press access within the Pentagon, a move that is raising eyebrows among journalists and media organizations. Announced late on a Friday afternoon, the new policies come in response to a series of high-profile leaks that have plagued the Pentagon during Hegseth's brief tenure. Critics argue that these measures are not only punitive but also threaten the fundamental principles of press freedom in the United States. The restrictions outlined in a detailed memo effectively confine accredited journalists to a limited area of the Pentagon while requiring them to obtain permission and be escorted by a government official to access other parts of the building. This includes the offices of senior military leaders, notably the Joint Chiefs of Staff and various military branches, which have historically maintained open lines of communication with the press. Under the new guidelines, reporters will also be banned from the Pentagon's Athletic Center and must wear new badges that prominently display the word press. Hegseth justified the restrictions as necessary for national security, claiming that while the Department of Defense remains committed to transparency, it is also obliged to protect classified information that could endanger U.S. service members if disclosed. The unauthorized disclosure of sensitive information could put lives in danger, he stated in a post on X, previously known as Twitter. However, the Pentagon Press Association has expressed skepticism regarding the motivations behind these changes. In a statement, they labeled the memo as a direct attack on the freedom of the press and America's right to know what its military is doing. They further emphasized that the new access limitations appear to be more punitive than protective, questioning how restricting press access would effectively curb leaks. The backdrop of Hegseth's crackdown includes a series of embarrassing leaks that have surfaced since he took office. Notably, a report by the New York Times revealed that billionaire Elon Musk was scheduled for a briefing on military strategies concerning potential conflict with China, an event that was later cancelled at the orders of President Trump. In light of these leaks, Hegseth has launched multiple investigations and even suspended 2 Pentagon officials in a bid to identify the sources of the disclosures. Moreover, the restrictions represent a broader trend of increasing hostility between the Trump administration and the media. Following the announcement, journalists pointed out that Hegseth's approach mirrors other recent actions by the administration, including investigations into major news networks and the removal of certain press organizations from dedicated workspace within the Pentagon. The lack of press briefings from Hegseth, who has not addressed reporters in the Pentagon briefing room since his appointment, further underscores the administration's growing distance from traditional media practices. As press freedoms face challenges not only within the Pentagon but across the federal government, observers are left to ponder the long-term implications of Hegseth's directives. With increasing scrutiny on the administration's transparency and accountability, the path forward remains uncertain. The ongoing tension between government officials and the press highlights a critical moment in the landscape of American democracy, where the balance between national security and the public's right to information is continually tested. Moving forward, it will be essential to monitor how these restrictions impact journalistic practices and the flow of information surrounding U.S. military operations. In a significant diplomatic move, U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is set to meet with Argentine President Javier Milei in Buenos Aires. This meeting, scheduled for next week, comes at a time when global health discussions are increasingly crucial, particularly as nations grapple with various health challenges and the integration of health policies in broader governance. Kennedy's visit marks a continuation of his outreach efforts in South America, aiming to strengthen health collaborations and address pressing healthcare issues. The meeting is likely to focus on a range of topics, including public health initiatives, vaccine distribution, and regulatory frameworks for pharmaceuticals. As the Biden administration continues to prioritize global health security, Kennedy's role as health secretary places him at the forefront of these discussions. In a recent statement, he underscored the importance of international cooperation, stating, "Health knows no borders and our collective efforts must reflect that reality." This visit also comes on the heels of a controversial Senate committee hearing where Kennedy defended the need for a safety review of mifepristone, a drug used in the majority of abortions in the United States. Citing a report from the Ethics and Public Policy Center, which has faced criticism for its lack of scientific rigor, Kennedy asserted that the high rate of adverse events associated with the drug warrants a re-evaluation of its safety guidelines. Critics argue that this reliance on questionable science could undermine public trust in health regulations and the FDA's credibility. Kennedy's controversial stance on mifepristone, along with his history of endorsing scientifically dubious claims in other health-related areas, has drawn scrutiny from both sides of the political aisle. Prominent health experts have expressed concerns that using flawed studies to guide policy could lead to detrimental public health outcomes. As Kennedy prepares for his trip to Argentina, the implications of his policies and statements on global health governance remain to be seen. The backdrop of this meeting is also notable given the recent passing of Ethel Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s mother, and a prominent figure in social justice advocacy. Her legacy of resilience and dedication to humanitarian causes may serve as a poignant reminder for Kennedy as he navigates complex health discussions abroad. President Joe Biden, reflecting on Ethel's impact, described her as an emblem of resilience and service. This sentiment resonates deeply within the Kennedy family. which has long been intertwined with American political history and advocacy. As Kennedy engages with Milei, the outcomes of their discussions could set the tone for future U.S.-Argentina health collaborations. Observers will be watching closely to see how Kennedy's approach to international health policy evolves, especially in light of the criticisms he faces domestically. The meeting not only highlights the importance of global health diplomacy but also raises questions about the intersection of science policy and public trust in health governance. Looking ahead, the implications of Kennedy's policies and the reactions they elicit will undoubtedly shape the landscape of health policy not just in the U.S. but across the globe. As global health challenges continue to mount, the need for evidence-based policymaking and international cooperation has never been more critical, with leaders like Kennedy steering these conversations. The future of global health initiatives remains a topic of immense importance in scrutiny. In a troubling turn of events, the U.S. Department of Justice (DOJ) has implemented significant cuts to public safety grants, leaving local police departments and nonprofit organizations scrambling to adapt. This unexpected decision, announced in late April, has sparked widespread concern among law enforcement officials and community leaders who rely on federal funding to support crucial anti-crime initiatives. The Council on Criminal Justice reports that approximately 373 grants worth around $500 million have been terminated, a move that many believe will have dire consequences for public safety across the nation. Kelsey McDaniel, the district attorney in Union County, Oregon, expressed her dismay at the abruptness of the cuts, noting, "We knew that there were federal cuts coming. But we didn't think that it would include things that were within the program goals and agency priorities that the DOJ had previously talked about." McDaniel's office had used federal grant money to fund an investigator, a position critical for tackling serious crime, particularly in building cases against fentanyl dealers responsible for fatal overdoses. With the grant now canceled, she worries about the future of such essential funding. The impact of these cuts is likely to extend beyond staffing shortages. Jim Birch, president of the National Policing Institute, warned that the sudden withdrawal of funding could lead to layoffs of valuable personnel, including crime analysts and IT specialists, ultimately diminishing the capacity for patrol services. Federal grants allow agencies to really do things that they wouldn't ordinarily otherwise be able to do, he stated, underscoring the essential role that these funds play in local law enforcement. Community-based organizations, particularly those involved in violence intervention, are also feeling the strain. Akila Sherrills, co-founder of the community-based Public Safety Collective, criticized the decision as lacking in research and foresight. "They don't know what they're doing. They're just pulling things apart," he lamented, highlighting the contradiction between the Biden administration's previous support for community violence intervention programs and the current administration's cuts. Sherrills' organization received a termination letter that stated their grant did not align with the administration's priorities, a phrase echoed in many other communications to grant recipients. In response to inquiries regarding the rationale behind the cuts, the DOJ issued a statement reiterating its focus on prosecuting crime and removing illegal drugs from the streets. The statement emphasized that discretionary funds not aligned with current administration priorities would be subject to review and reallocation, while also expressing a willingness to work with affected organizations to address funding appeals. The controversy surrounding the cuts has reignited discussions on the accountability of federal grant spending. In Minneapolis, attorney Dean Thompson previously sued local officials demanding greater transparency in how violence intervention funds were allocated. "Taxpayers don't know how their funds are being spent because the city didn't know how their funds were being spent," Thompson remarked, casting doubt on whether the cuts were justified. Experts in crime reduction like Thomas Abt, director of the Violence Reduction Center at the University of Maryland, have emphasized the importance of utilizing existing research to inform funding decisions. Abt pointed out that the information necessary for making informed decisions about grant allocations is readily available, yet it appears that the administration did not consult this data before enacting such sweeping changes. As the dust settles from these cuts, the future of public safety funding remains uncertain. Law enforcement agencies and community organizations are left to navigate this new landscape, facing the daunting task of finding alternative funding sources to fill the gaps left by the federal government's withdrawal. The implications of these cuts are significant, raising questions about the long-term effects on crime reduction efforts and community safety across the country. As stakeholders react and adapt, the conversation surrounding public safety funding is likely to continue evolving, underscoring the critical need for collaboration, transparency, and informed decision-making in the realm of crime prevention. In a landscape marked by economic uncertainty, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has issued a stark warning regarding the implications of the government's spending habits. In a recent appearance on CNBC's Squawk Box, Bessent described the current economic climate as entering a detox period, suggesting that the market has become overly reliant on government expenditure. His comments come amid a backdrop of rising federal deficits and growing concerns about a potential recession, raising alarms for investors and consumers alike. Bessent's warning highlights a significant shift in the narrative surrounding the U.S. economy. Just a year ago, the Trump administration was promoting an optimistic vision of extraordinary economic benefits stemming from its policies. Fast forward to today, and Bessent indicates that the reliance on excessive government spending is poised to create a challenging economic environment. The market and the economy have become addicted to excessive government spending, he remarked, emphasizing that this dependency will necessitate a painful adjustment period. The ramifications of this detox period are already manifesting. By the end of 2024, government expenditures accounted for 34% of the nation's gross domestic product, while the federal budget deficit surged to $1.3 trillion in March 2025, an increase of 15% compared to the same time the previous year. Despite a 3% increase in federal revenues, spending rose by 7%, underscoring a troubling trend of growing fiscal imbalance. The stock market's volatility, particularly during the second week of April, further underscores investor anxiety, with J.P. Morgan and Chase recently raising the odds of a recession from 40% to 60%. In light of these developments, Bessent urged investors to consider strategies to shock-proof their portfolios. He pointed to gold as a particularly appealing asset, noting its historical resilience during periods of economic turmoil. Currently trading above $3,000 per ounce, gold is projected by J.P. Morgan to potentially reach an average price of $3,675 by the end of 2025, with expectations of hitting $4,000 by mid-2026. Adding a little gold exposure to your portfolio could help insulate your wealth, Bessent advised, signaling a shift towards safer investments. The economic landscape is further complicated by discussions surrounding the government-sponsored enterprises GSEs Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. In a separate statement, Bessent indicated that any potential release of these entities from conservatorship would need to be carefully evaluated, particularly in light of rising mortgage rates and bond yields, with mortgage rates already surpassing 7%. The risk of further increases looms large if government backing is removed. Bessent emphasized that the administration must first address trade-related concerns before moving forward with any release initiative. This delicate balancing act reflects the broader challenges facing the U.S. economy. Bessent's insights come as Treasury officials prepare for meetings with Chinese representatives to discuss trade and economic matters, signaling a potential thaw in the ongoing trade war. However, Bessent cautioned against expecting immediate breakthroughs, framing the upcoming discussions as crucial steps toward de-escalation rather than a comprehensive trade agreement. As the economic landscape continues to evolve, Bessent's comments underscore the importance of prudent financial strategies for both individuals and institutions. The detox period, he describes, may pose significant challenges, but it also presents an opportunity for informed investors to reassess their positions and navigate through turbulence. With a careful approach to fiscal policy and a focus on sustainable economic practices, the path forward may yet lead to a more stable and resilient financial future. In conclusion, the current period of economic adjustment may be painful, but it is essential for establishing a healthier long-term outlook. As policymakers grapple with the implications of their decisions, investors and consumers alike must remain vigilant, adapting to the shifting tides while seeking stability in uncertain times. The future will depend on how effectively stakeholders respond to these challenges and harness the opportunities that arise from a recalibrated economic environment. In a recent public appearance that has sparked considerable online debate, Howard Lutnick, the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, found himself at the center of controversy for his comments regarding the economic impact of tariffs imposed during the Trump administration. During an Axios event, Lutnick asserted that Americans have not felt any negative effects from these tariffs, a statement that was met with immediate backlash from the audience present. "You go to the store, now you feeling the pain of tariffs?" Lutnick asked the crowd, seemingly expecting a positive affirmation of his claim. However, he quickly self-corrected, stating no, because there is no pain. This assertion, which he attempted to bolster by citing an expected $35 billion in tariff revenue for May, did not sit well with the audience. When he asked if they felt any impact from the tariffs, they responded in unison with a resounding yes, leaving Lutnick momentarily speechless. The incident reflects a broader disconnect often observed between high-ranking officials and the everyday experiences of average Americans. Critics have seized on this moment to underscore the perceived insensitivity of billionaire politicians to the struggles faced by citizens grappling with rising prices in grocery stores and other essential goods. One Twitter user succinctly captured the sentiment, "Gotta love billionaires telling everyday Americans they're not actually feeling the pain of high prices in the grocery store." Lutnick's comments also sparked a wave of reactions on social media, with many users mocking his apparent shock at the audience's response. Observers pointed out that this moment is emblematic of a larger issue within the current administration, where economic policies championed by wealthy officials do not align with the realities faced by the working class. As Lutnick continues to serve in his influential role, the implications of such public missteps may have lasting effects on public perception of the administration's economic policies. The growing discontent among average Americans regarding inflation and the cost of living highlights the critical need for policymakers to engage more effectively with the constituents they serve. Looking ahead, this incident may prompt a re-evaluation of communication strategies within the Commerce Department and the administration as a whole. As economic pressures mount, the ability of policymakers to resonate with the everyday experiences of the American populace will be crucial in shaping both public opinion and future policy directions. The fallout from Lutnick's comments may serve as a wake-up call, signaling the importance of a more grounded approach to economic discussions moving forward.